maybe it's one of those things where if we get to look 5 years past the end of the movie, maybe it's not a happy ending.
She's just still a drunk.
She just does the same stuff still.
She lost the cat again.
No, I didn't. I thought it was a movie.
I've never seen the movie, but I like the TV show, or at least the first few seasons.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I was trying to think up a snappy name
for your show
for this thing if it ends up being a thing, and we do some more of it and different people come on and stuff.
Yes.
But I don't know. I didn't really arrive at anything all that good. So I think the tentative might just be talking about whether a classic movie still holds up after all these years. I think
and that's what you're going to call it.
I think that's perfect. I think it's accurate.
Yeah. I actually like that a lot.
Our special guest today is Annie Rives, actress and podcast host of Girls Interrupted. Annie Rives.
Yes, hello. Very excited to be here.
We're going to talk about whether a classic movie still holds up after all these years. I was talking about the idea with a different friend of mine, and previously it was based around, okay, we'll look at all these old movies that everybody says are so great, usually in black and white, and see if they're still relevant today. And as I kind of talked about in that short video on the Godard stuff, which was, a whole thing.
I like that
video. I don't really want to approach it from the side of like a strictly political perspective. Oh, this thing is bad today. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like how people look at old Disney movies and they're like, oh, it's problematic that Ariel doesn't have a voice or something for so much stuff like that, which it's all valid. It makes sense to go back and look at especially kids movies and how they communicate certain messages. But I think for the stuff that we're talking about, it would be closer to just talking about whether it holds up like as a movie, itself, and as a piece of art, I guess. So if you're down with that,
I'm down.
Then we're gonna move forward to talk about Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is a movie.
It is a movie.
That's my background info. That's my research. No. I do have a couple points of like the history of movie that we can kind of talk about in a little bit. But first, I think it would be fun just to talk about our personal experiences with watching the movie in the first place and our feelings on it. And then after that, we can maybe make our cases of whether or not it does indeed still hold up. So go for it. Tell me about your relationship with Breakfast at Tiffany's.
This movie I actually didn't see until I was an adult for the first time. Actually, just this time through was my second time ever seeing it ever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But I saw it, or watched it with a friend that really, really liked it. So I don't know. I feel like my first time watching it, positive environment. I enjoyed it. Liked it. It was on the tail end of my Sex and the City phase in life. So it was I felt like this movie ran so Sex and the City, or wait, what is the saying? This movie walked so Sex and the City could run.
Oh,
type of deal.
Okay. I get that.
Women making bad choices with men in their lives. Oh, this is a story about a girl and her cat. That's what I took away.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm joking. Sorry. What about you?
I'm trying to remember how old I was when I first saw it, but I'm guessing I was early teens-ish, and it was probably just because we were watching a decent amount of older movies growing up, and at the time I was really only familiar with some of the older film stars. I kind of knew Cary Grant, Danny Kaye, and who's the dancing man? Not Fred Astaire. Gene Kelly, I've seen some of those movies and stuff. And of course, I was aware of Audrey Hepburn because she's kept a pretty nice legacy to herself.
Yes.
And has kind of remained untouched as classic movie star. And also didn't have to die very young like Marilyn Monroe or Judy Garland, and all those starlets. So she really, kind of a feat that she kept up that legacy so well and picked pretty good projects, I think, throughout her career.
Totally.
But anyway, that first time around, I don't think I really was paying too much attention to the plot. I think it was more just about, I can recognize this as a famous image, or I've seen this stuff before, especially the famous outfit, and she has her long cigarette holder and stuff. So I recognize that imagery. But the story was just kind of blah. Stuff happening. And then I definitely remembered the big sidewalk speech at the end when it's raining. remember?
Yes.
And he's getting out of the cab and he gives this big dramatic old Hollywood speech.
Yes.
And I liked that at the time because I was like, oh, cool, dramatic speech. That's what good movies are. Even though it doesn't really fit and it doesn't seem like it fits his character super well and doesn't make a ton of sense either. But at the time I was like, oh, that's so cool. And that was probably the lasting impression. But yeah, I'm sure I saw it the second time, several years later. I had rewatched it recently, although yeah, it has changed my perspective on it a little bit. I guess I could say that I had always been ambivalent towards Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
It was never a super favorite, but I also didn't mind it at all. On a personal level.
Are we going to get into the plot? Because I have a theory.
You have a theory?
Yes,
okay.
Well, I either didn't remember or I didn't pay attention the first time I watched it, but I didn't realize that this was a book by Truman Capote.
That's right.
So I think that Paul's character is Truman. I think he had a friendship with a woman like this, and at the end, I think he made them fall in love because it's Hollywood. I just feel like maybe she's based off a real person. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe not everything. But
right.
like.
Well, in fact, when I was researching the movie the other day, apparently based the character of Holly on several different women, all friends or close acquaintances of his. Claims have been made as to the source of the character in what Capote called the Holly Golightly sweepstakes, including Gloria Vanderbilt, Una O'Neill, Carol Grace, writer Maeve Brennan, writer Doris Lilly, Dorian Lee, and her sister Susie Parker. So wow, we have a lot of people that, this wave of assumption and conjecture that may be this character. And, oh boy, this could end up being a lot of our discussion too, but a lot of these seem to be kind of like it girls of a brief moment in time. Apparently Marilyn Monroe was also kind of a candidate.
To play the role?
No, like that it was based on, supposedly based on, I think. I think your theory is spot on, and I don't doubt that there was at least one real-life basis for the character, which makes it interesting too. And yeah, I don't know too much about Capote's personal life because I watched that remember that movie Capote with Phil Hoff?
Yes.
That's it. That's the extent of it. So I hope that was accurate. But yeah, he was a New York guy and well known, right, as an author.
Wait a second. You've never read In Cold Blood?
I think I read like half of it at some point.
No shit.
Something like that.
That's actually one of my favorite novels. And
wow.
I'm kind of surprised, Mr. Writer, that you.
Well.
But it's fine. It's okay.
I haven't. No. I watched that movie and that was about it.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. But I was like, when I saw his name pop up. I was like,
right, it is a little surprising given the subject matter seems to be really different, and I guess that's a pretty good segue to get into just a couple points about the history of both the novel and the movie.
Cool.
Or I guess technically a novella. At least from what I can gather about the book and it being published and everything, it seems like it was kind of pulpy. It was sort of pulp fiction in a way where it's just kind of a fun little book. Like I don't think it was necessarily trying to be literature. Or anything like that.
Totally.
At least that's the impression I get, and especially from the story content and everything. It kind of feels like almost a romance novel in a way.
Or I can imagine.
Yeah, but not quite as trashy as that. It's well written. I'm sure it's well written. I haven't read it, but but it feels like that. And I think in particular, the character of Holly Golightly was a big like national thing. Like I think it set a weird kind of standard for what we could either call it girl or even like maybe the very, very, very beginning of kind of the manic pixie dream girl thing, kind of.
Totally.
Just in the sense of like being, erratic and kind of wacky but lovable.
Oh, totally.
I think even when other people talk about trying to understand the success of the book and the movie, and by the way, they also tried to make a musical adaptation.
They did.
That supposedly closed after 4 shows.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing. But like this was a hot intellectual property, like Holly Golightly, essentially. And I think, especially when we're talking about the movie, that's the only part that anyone actually cares about is this performance and this character, I think. And the song, the Moon River and everything, and is an extremely famous movie song. Also, it just happened to be at like peak Audrey Hepburn time.
Yeah.
She was doing a lot of good stuff around this time. Obviously still the cool up-and-comer in a way, too. She was still very much in the public eye at the time. It won 2 Oscars. Both of them were for music. It was included in 2012. It was, I don't know what the term is, inducted into the Library of Congress for preservation. So it has, I think by that alone, it's definitely achieved a general sense of status as a classic.
Yes.
At least here in the U.S. for sure. Definitely popular in its own time and has remained so. And I'm a bit curious as to exactly why it has kept such long legs. Maybe this is the part where we can get into how it works today, and whether it's still relevant.
Totally.
What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on this?
You know what? My gut reaction kind of says, like, I can see this being made. Not remade, I'm not saying that, but, like, I can see this movie being made right now with, like, different actors.
Okay.
Is that fair?
As in,
like, I can
as
see
in the
someone
premise,
still coming out with a script like this, yeah.
So just the idea that the premise and the characters would still work or appeal to modern audiences?
Yes. And not even, like, work, because, like, they kind of shouldn't, or not even kind of, but, like, I can see it still being made, if that makes sense.
I see. Okay. Yeah. And would it be a throwback period piece kind of thing to the 60s, or would it just be completely contemporary setting and characters?
Let's say contemporary.
Okay.
Like, it just,
Okay.
A girl in the city living off all these men who treat her like poop, and that she also strings along, and I can see it. Party girl. It sounds like a girl's mini plot, does it not? Or something.
Yeah, kind of like Hustlers in a way, where there's like a vague through line of not necessarily empowerment, but like independence in a way. And it's funny too, because as the original movie stands, it kind of feels like it's supposed to be that Holly Golightly is supposed to be the lead character.
Yes.
Because our quote unquote actual lead, whose name what is the name of his character?
Paul,
Paul,
but she keeps calling him Fred.
Right, because that's quirky. I feel like that's been done in a ton of rom-coms since then. Oh, it was definitely done in Pierrot Le Fou, the Godard movie with Anna Karina. Yeah. The whole time he's like, my name is this. And she's like, I'm calling you Pierrot because I'm wacky. But yeah, it just feels like, I don't know, Paul is kind of useless. He really is just like a framing character in a way.
That's kind of why I think he's Capote.
Well, he is. Well, that's it. Is that it, completely transparently, it's an author insert character who also happens to be a Mary Sue. Like there's nothing wrong with him really. He's just
right.
Oh, he's failed potential or something, but he still gets to have a nice life, and hang out with interesting people and things like that.
Is he a male prostitute or just that?
Kind of. I think he's
sugar
just
baby?
kind of he's just kind of in a sugar baby situation, I think.
Okay.
And he's kind of fine with it, but also not, and hates himself for it. It's weird,
okay,
but yeah, his character to me feels so unimportant. He really is just around. He never really has anything to contribute. He like thinks he could maybe date Holly, I guess. Maybe that's why he keeps hanging around.
Yeah, but even then, she's kind of like Sally Bowles in the sense that like she's the one making all the advances, if there are any.
Yeah, there are only arguably advances,
right?
Or signs of interest in any way.
And even then, they're very platonic, in my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe that is the real life basis that he was drawing from, was just this a very platonic, kind of friendly, playful relationship, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, as it stands, or at least when they adapted it into, I don't think they needed that character at all. And especially if it got remade today, well, as is the obvious move now, Holly's our main character, that's it, right? Everything's in her perspective, because that's just the uncreative thing that everyone's doing now with remakes. I think Holly could have just been the lead character the whole time. I don't see the need. You can still have ancillary characters. Paul can even be there, but it's not his story, and we don't see it from his perspective. So
I wonder if that was like a time period thing too. Like, I can't really. Did they have female leads? Does that? Is that fair to
Well,
ask?
yes,
Or
it is. And I
yeah.
think it was, I mean, it did happen, but not a whole lot. I mean, right away, I can think of female led movies, but unfortunately, a lot of time they're horror movies, and the woman ends up being a victim, which bleeds into a very long running tradition, especially in American fiction, of violence towards women as the basis for horror or mystery stories
Yeah.
or crime dramas. You're never going to see one where, like, a guy gets murdered and there's a mystery that blooms from
Totally.
it. I just wanted to say, yeah, in a way, Breakfast at Tiffany's does kind of feel like a vague attempt, even though I don't think necessarily they were trying to make a female-led movie, and that's why we have so much Paul, because like there was some kind of friction there, or they felt like it just wouldn't work, or something behind the scenes, or something else I feel about the movie in general is just that, and in most ways, it's really traditional in a way, or like it was contemporary to that time, and a lot of the basic filmmaking elements haven't aged especially well, in my opinion, which is one of the reasons why I'm just a little surprised that it has maintained such a huge popularity and all that kind of thing.
Well,
But maybe that was it. Like this, this director who I'm not even familiar with, but I think he mostly did Hollywood flicks, like mainstream stuff. And this was a hot property, so they threw it to him. He's like, okay, well, we're just gonna do it, and they didn't even consider an actual female-led movie. I don't know.
I was just gonna say, I think it's still popular because of the clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and I also, I wonder if people even watch the movie. Because, it's like you said, the famous outfit. People just like the style, and like Audrey Hepburn, and she's like
Right.
the epitome of class and beauty,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah, and
Right?
yeah, it has become part of collective culture, and like to the point where, to an extremely commercial extent too, where like it's an IKEA wall hanging that's in every dorm room in
Yes.
America.
Yes, yes. But it's funny watching it though, because she's a mess.
Right.
Like her
That's
character's a
it's a
total
facade.
train
Right.
wreck. Yeah.
That whole opening sequence is her pretending that things are great.
Yeah.
And that she has a bunch of money and stuff.
So I'm perplexed too. I'm like, yeah.
That makes it
Gotta
kind
be
of
the
funny
outfits.
too. Yeah, that makes it kind of funny that people have really latched onto it in that way, in that surface level way. But at the same time, I do understand, because one of the best things it has going for it is just a bunch of iconic imagery, right?
Yes.
And even if it wasn't planned specifically to be like hard-hitting images and stuff and sequences, like it's still there. And apparently a number of these things just really connected with audiences, and I guess continue to connect with audiences. Definitely that opening outfit and everything, and that title sequence and stuff. Although outside of that, I don't know. Is there really anything else that has endured in the same way from the movie? Like,
I want that eye mask.
oh,
And
I
those
do kind of
earplugs.
remember the eye mask. I remember the eye mask, and there's a big party.
Yes, the party scene is I think,
Party
I feel like
scene.
pretty famous. Or like,
There's like a Brazilian suitor who's gonna marry her or something.
yes.
They rob a dollar store.
Do you remember in the party scene? There's like this blonde guy. I think she even leaves with him, but it's like bottle blonde. But he kind of looked like the night. When was this movie filmed? Sometime in the 60s, right?
Mid-60s.
He was
right?
like the mid 60s Jonah Hill, in my opinion. I just kept seeing him and being like, "That's Jonah Hill."
Oh, he's supposed to be like kind of dumpy, right?
Yeah, like he
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
he left that drunk lady who was like yelling at him or something.
But I guess what I'm saying is, like I think it's actually tough to find any other specific imagery that really stands out in the movie. I mean, certainly not in the same way, because that's such a famous image of the dress and all that kind of stuff.
This
Yeah,
is
even scenes, even specific scenes, I have kind of a tough time recalling stuff that really stands out in any special way. I don't know that it does.
Like you said, the last scene.
Last scene, the raincoats and stuff is very dramatic, and the cat is there, and it gets smushed when they hug. And that borrows from some older Hollywood stuff too, in a certain way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, for the most part, I really think it's just that one image, and maybe you're right. Maybe that's as far as it goes in terms of modern day relevance, or at least identification, with modern audiences. It's just like, oh yeah, I know that thing. I know that look, and I know that song. Everybody knows the Henry Mancini song, and it's kind of wild. That's a lot of discussion stuff, but like, do you have a definitive argument for whether or not it is still really relevant as a movie, or just a piece of art that exists?
I guess I'm trying to think of maybe like more movies that came out around this time or even prior to this, because like maybe some of the stuff is new, like that party scene, like the way it was shot. Like, was that do you get what I'm saying? Like, was that quirky and revolutionary? But because you're right, like plot wise, it's like meh. I feel like sacrilege though, I do, of being like, no, it doesn't hold up. But Does it?
Well,
It
it's
was
whatever.
aesthetically pleasing.
It's whatever you feel, like if
Yeah.
I don't think there's an objective answer to that
Yeah.
question. And in terms of like the technical stuff and even like camera movement and things like that, and the cinematography, I do think I would really have to look pretty closely to see. But like, yeah, even just looking at other stuff from 61, you had West Side Story. So there's that. That had some pretty ambitious stuff, technically. Because that's what's his face. That's Robert Wise, right?
Yes.
And he, he's great at shooting musicals, and he's really good at having those huge sets. I mean, Yojimbo, of course, that was Japanese, so I don't know if American audiences really tuned into that one. The Parent Trap, the original one, was 61.
Okay.
And, oh, look, a Godard movie called A Woman is a Woman, which I actually kind of like. It's fine. It's okay.
You heard it, folks.
No, I think I mentioned in that one, too. And... oh, La Notte, too, the Antonioni film. Wow. And One-Eyed Jacks, which is a Brando movie that David Lynch used the name of for Twin Peaks. So long story short, my impression, based on my very limited knowledge of the technical aspects of filmmaking around that time, is just that compared to foreign stuff, Breakfast at Tiffany's wasn't necessarily the most inventive or anything, but maybe for American audiences it was slightly different, at least in content, especially because just that a lot of the musical score behind it, right, the Mancini stuff, anything that's not Moon River, I think sounds incredibly dated for like, it's basically sounds like a 60s TV show to me. Like it sounds like That Girl or something. Yeah, the instruments they were using, and like it feels really commercial, and I don't like listening to it. Totally. So that's my very subjective read of like just one big element of the movie that was also an Oscar-winning element of the movie that doesn't seem like it holds up especially well, and doesn't seem like it was especially forward-thinking. It was contemporary, so there's that. It wasn't old-fashioned at the time, but 50, 60 years later, it doesn't still feel fresh. So I can't speak to the visuals and everything quite as much. I do think there are a lot of great sequences in the movie, and obviously we talked about some cool imagery throughout. But yeah, in terms of the specific scenes and how those are shot, I don't know. At least in my memory, it feels kind of conventional. Certainly that hecticness, is that a word? The craziness of that party is one thing, and I think that's kind of neat, and I guess we can say the character of Holly is kind of forward thinking, I guess.
Yeah, again, I'm trying to like squish my brain into like maybe that was totally scandalous, her living like that, and also even him living like that, like a male sugar baby. That's true.
And I mean, certainly the way they portrayed Paul's character within that whole situation is it's sort of an emasculation thing, because like whenever he's reminded of his situation, he looks like a puppy dog that just got beaten in the back alley. So like the audience knows how they're supposed to feel about that.
Yes.
Which is kind of weird, because I don't think the way Holly's situation is portrayed, I don't think it's necessarily meant to be like a finger wag. I could understand it still being somewhat controversial even today, the idea of like just fusing people as much as you can to get by, but she had a bad past, so it's kind of justified. To me, it doesn't feel like the movie's looking down on that character.
Right.
So that would be the forward-thinking element for me, is allowing a character like that, which we already know at the time period was a big deal and was like felt cutting edge to people, apparently, at least in terms of women in movies, I guess. So maybe that is its big strength in a way, even if I think there are certain ramifications of the character of Holly Golightly that are not so positive.
Agreed.
In the long run. I also can't blame anyone for that. And again, I don't want to go from a very political angle of just saying, oh, well, it's a little bit problematic, so it's bad. I don't think that really applies. And I do respect that the movie just seems to promote this character and say, well, you know what? This is just the character. It's not super judgy.
Yeah.
She's just allowed to do her thing.
That's a good point. And she even gets her happy ending. Like, they could have
I guess
let
she
her
does.
be miserable.
Well, although she spent the whole movie telling us that if the thing that happens to her at the end of the movie happens, she'll be miserable. So maybe it's one of those things where if we get to look 5 years past the end of the movie, maybe it's not a happy ending.
She's just still a drunk.
She just does the same stuff still.
She lost the cat again. I was so mad. I was like, ah!
Yeah, the whole cat thing is, the cat itself, of course, is a very heavy-handed metaphor.
Yeah.
and kind of a character foil.
It is a very.
But you know what? You know what happens if we extend Breakfast at Tiffany's and we stick around after the credits?
What?
I think it would basically just turn into Mad Men.
Mad Men, Mad
Like that, because that show basically starts with everybody's fine and they're kind of okay with their situation, and then it's like, and then life happens and everything gets worse.
Absolutely.
And there are no happy endings.
Oh my gosh, I wonder, like, again, like, historically noting this movie, I wonder if that's also a big part of why it's so idolized. Was this also like a big beacon before, you know, like you said, real shit started to happen? Just like it was beautiful and fun. I mean, not totally
Okay.
fun, but like this is about this free spirit woman.
So just as pure escapist entertainment.
Yes.
At the time, I could see that, especially because, yeah, I think it was released 61. That was certainly the transition. The stuff that we remember the 60s for hadn't hopped in yet.
Yes, quite yet.
And even going back to what I mentioned about the original text feeling to me more like just pulp, you know, just popular fiction.
Yeah.
It makes sense then that the film adaptation wasn't trying to be anything very lofty. It wasn't trying to hit audiences with some profound message, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I don't either.
Even though, I don't know, in a way, isn't it a story of like taking someone who's different and normalizing them?
Ooh.
I mean, at least in the way of like, let's translate Holly Golightly to today. She is a slightly eccentric, pansexual, non-monogamous lady who is also a sugar baby part-time when she feels like it, right? And she has an Etsy store where she makes crocheted pot holders with like anatomically correct female genitalia. And
Wait,
I
are
hope
we gonna
this
make this movie?
it's already in pre-production again.
Okay.
And I hope none of this sounds dismissive. I'm not trying to talk down to this character in any way, but just like what we would think of today as like kind of a free spirit person, or like vaguely free thinking, and
Yes.
progressive in a way, I guess, which Holly Golightly kind of is. Sometimes
She kind of is, yeah.
Sometimes she doesn't really, she's not challenged
But
to
then
get
she
into anything big.
Strangled in at the end too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like,
Yeah.
if we translate it, if we had our modern day version of Holly Golightly, the movie would end with her like, yes, she definitely gets married. She definitely moves to the suburbs, and anything that she had really enjoyed, there isn't time for anymore, or whatever. She has to work some awful job for the rest of her life. So that's why it's a bit weird to me that, like, okay, on the one hand, yes, in 1961, getting together and having the big love story and a very, very dramatic music, and the rain and everything, that definitely fit in with the time period, and it had a very long history of incredibly similar endings and all the old Hollywood stuff, 40s and 50s for the most part. So it's weird to me that it does feel like it takes a turn, even tonally, because I do think there are a number of things that were vaguely forward thinking about it or innovative, and then it's not so much.
And it's not, yeah.
Or I guess we could also interpret it as, well, she was in this really negative spiral and she's getting to a healthier place mentally at the end somehow. And accepting happiness, and I guess that's all just to say that ending is a bit strange to me.
It is.
And it doesn't quite plug in.
It takes you off guard.
Yeah, especially that speech, like I mentioned earlier. Like, it's out of nowhere. He doesn't even talk that much through most of the movie, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to summarize your character and your faults and go look for the cat.
Thank God.
I'm going to be the big hero who knows everything, and I'm going to solve the situation.
She sits there a minute.
She's trying to figure stuff out.
This one can go in the vault, right?
Goes in the Disney vault.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's to its credit that it's still many years later, many decades later, it's still too controversial for Disney Plus. I think
Way to go, Capote.
I think that's valuable right now. But yeah, Capote, I don't know. I do wish I knew more about Capote, and maybe, I mean, not that his intentions for the story are necessarily the most important thing for understanding it, but it just seems strange. I don't know. It seems, based on what I know about him, it doesn't seem to fit too much. But probably just because I'm thinking of In Cold Blood, and the heavier content and more.
Maybe there are parts of him in Holly too.
Could be. It could be some kind of like character foil, almost wish fulfillment thing. of him wanting to be a free spirit in some way or something, trying to step into those shoes, of these socialite women who just kind of do whatever.
Yeah,
I don't
she
know.
literally climbed into someone else's apartment.
That's true. That's
You're
true.
right,
That
she
would be
does whatever.
that would be looked down on. Oh yeah, isn't she also like she's sending messages for the mob? Remember that part?
Oh yeah.
What is that?
Holly could also be like Laura Palmer.
Well, see,
That's dark. Sorry.
Yeah, she's kind of from the same, or rather, Laura Palmer feels like she's from that tradition,
Right?
of
Yeah.
young starlet and tragedy strikes and, and all that kind of stuff. With the mob stuff too, I don't know, because they really heavily imply that like she's too dumb to get what she's doing, which is weird.
Yeah.
She
Okay,
doesn't
so-
seem dumb to me.
Yeah. I don't think so either. And to your point of like no one's wagging the finger, they
Yeah.
did like you're right. It was like, but she's not smart, and but she cries all the time, and she actually is like kind of pitiful, isn't she? Like,
Yeah.
let's get her a man who doesn't talk.
Well, he talks sometimes.
Talk sometimes.
And
He talks when he has something to say,
he talks in the rain, and he has a red typewriter.
with no ribbon in it.
Who's the actor? Who is this guy?
You're right. I have no
I don't know his
idea.
name.
We don't know who you are, Paul.
I'm looking it up. It's George Peppard. Remember
Never heard of
George
him.
Peppard? He was in The Blue Max, The Carpetbaggers, and How the West Was Won,
Okay. I
And the-
recognized one of those titles.
and The A-Team,
Oh, in the A-Team.
and Doctor's Hospital. I don't know how I can describe this. He does kind of feel like a TV actor to me, and that's not supposed to be an insult.
For shame.
He just feels fine. He's fine. He's a guy in a movie.
He had, you know what? He had a great listening face.
Maybe,
Or
and you know
observing
what?
face.
Maybe that was the reason for casting. He functions in the story as an observer or kind of as a storyteller.
Yes.
So he just needs to be there looking at stuff.
He was very
looking at stuff
receptive.
happening. Yeah, yeah.
I thought he was better than her.
Really?
In some parts. Yeah.
Wow,
Oh,
interesting.
sorry, again, sacrilege. But yeah,
no,
some-
I mean that's fine. Yeah.
like I get it. Like you said, she's like a Hollywood starlet, blah blah blah. But sometimes I do think she was overdoing it.
Oh yeah. No, there are actually quite a few moments where I'm not crazy about
Yeah.
Audrey Hepburn's performance in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's
Yeah.
also why I'm like meh about it still standing, because I really wasn't moved.
Right. And you know what? I mean, I don't know if I have made a solid case for whether or not the movie does hold up all in all, but if we're judging the value of art to a specific person based on emotional engagement and emotional impact, I don't get a lot from this one.
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of mileage there. That definitely takes away some points, because even if it's a movie I hate, or even if it's a movie that I love so much for different reasons, I do want it to have some kind of emotional resonance, and I feel like there was room for that in this story.
Yeah.
And not that every movie has to have that necessarily, but yeah, in terms of looking at it super long term, it is kind of missing that component for me.
Well, especially since you said, it was a love story, kind of. So shouldn't
It's
we be
kind of a
moved by
love story,
story?
and it's kind of I and maybe I was as a young child, just because like that last big scene, they're using all the tricks, all the Hollywood tricks, like, swelling string music, that's supposed to get you emotional. The big speech is supposed to get you emotional. It's raining and they kiss. Like, these are all the classic Hollywood elements to have a big dramatic scene at the end.
With an animal.
But when you really maybe mature a bit and look at it again, it's like it comes out of nowhere, and it's not necessarily earned, and that's strange for this movie.
Yeah.
And what was the other? This is actually a question I wanted to ask earlier on, but is this movie a comedy? You know,
I do think we're supposed to laugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes, which is yeah.
Yeah, there's like quirky stuff that's very much like, look at this, like look at this crazy thing happening. And in fact, I'm gonna try to find. Yeah, I'm also, because I was also curious about how it's officially classified in terms of genre,
Well,
and
yeah,
it's
sorry.
listed as comedy, drama, and romance. So there you
Wow.
go. So apparently, it's really funny and dramatic and romantic.
Well, I mean, yeah, just the billing alone, I don't think Mickey Rooney was in dramas.
Oh yeah, Mickey
Yeah.
Rooney.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's a big just like no. His apartment was great.
I don't remember. Yeah, I guess it's
I liked
a lot
the set
of
design in this movie. Set design and
No, that's true.
costumes.
Yeah, no, it does look very nice. Actually, and not that I necessarily put a lot of stock into aggregators and stuff, but I did just for kicks look up the Rotten Tomatoes for it.
Yes. Oh,
and,
yes.
I don't necessarily want to just read the internet to the internet, but
I have so many qualms with
Rotten Tomatoes and their business. Yeah, but yeah, no, even the summary claims that Blake Edwards, who is at his funniest in this iconic classic. Apparently, at one point, this movie was funny. I don't know about that. I mean, was that who directed? Yeah, Blake Edwards directed. Oh gosh, can't talk.
Funny.
And it was written by George Axelrod, who I don't even know. But yeah, my gosh, I don't think I agree. So at least I can say that. Even if I can't say yes or no that, oh gosh, this movie does or doesn't hold up, I don't think it's that funny. And I don't think I necessarily agree with what a lot of legacy critics have said about it. Oh, actually, this is kind of interesting. George Axelrod, I'll probably cut this out. I don't know. But he also wrote Paris When It Sizzles, which I actually like a lot. No one likes that movie.
I've seen it.
It's another Audrey Hepburn movie, and it's set up with she's supposed to be a secretary to a screenwriter, and he has to finish a movie, so every time he changes something in the script, they have an act out, essentially. It's kind of fun. It's weird.
And then he discovers her?
And then, well, no, they just end up kissing a lot.
Okay.
But he did Manchurian Candidate, which I've never seen, and he also wrote The 7-Year Itch, which is a bad movie.
Is that with
that I hate.
Marilyn Monroe?
Yes, that's the famous Subway Great dress thing. Although it's a fantasy, because most of the movie is just fantasies about his hot neighbor. Well, I think I've probably rambled enough about all those different details and stuff, but yeah, I don't think I have a really solid answer. I don't think it holds up especially well. Just as a movie, there's still a lot of things about it that I like and admire, and I do think even if it wasn't on purpose, it does deserve a certain amount of attention for giving us at the very least a slightly different kind of female character in a movie. So credit where credit is due. Yes, I'm fine with it being part of, Library of Congress preservation, whatever, and all that kind of stuff. But
absolutely.
But how about you? Do you have a final? Is there a verdict for this one?
I think it could go in the vault, like I said.
Yeah.
But I do totally agree with you. But I'm just thinking, is this something that I think everyone needs to see? And I went a long time without seeing it.
I see what you're saying. And you know what? Maybe that is one of the central questions in general that we could be asking for these kinds of discussions is it something that younger people or just, people in general who haven't seen a specific movie that is considered a classic, whether it's really worth checking out. Yeah. And since it is such a low investment, it's not really that long, is it? And I think for the imagery alone, there is a certain amount of value there in terms of shared cultural understanding, putting this imagery that we all know into context. Yes. I do think there's a certain amount of value to that. Yeah, and being aware of the story and this very specific character from this very specific moment in time. For filmmaking tips, probably not so much, at least not in my opinion.
Also, where was the breakfast?
Where was the breakfast? I don't understand. I guess she ate a croissant, right?
Yeah.
She ate a croissant at the window, I think.
Yeah, I guess that was it.
I hope it was a chocolate one. The chocolate ones are good.
It can be laid to rest, maybe. But that feels, even as I say that, I'm like, no.
Yeah, even that sounds extreme.
How
about this? It gets into the special club for classic movies.
Yes.
It's good enough to get through the door, but once it's in there, it's kind of just getting wasted and hanging around the corner of the room. It's not necessarily the most grounded and profound and interesting one, but it's there, and that counts for a lot.
And I guess we cannot disregard, for some reason, it just has circulated still. That has to say something about it.
There's something there. There's something there in just pure popularity, I guess. Yeah. As much as critics don't like to acknowledge that sometimes something has value just because a lot of people give it value. And
absolutely.
That's fine. That's great. If it speaks to people, that's really cool.
I agree that it's a classic.
Yeah. So,
and somewhat relevant.
Right.
It has great movie stills, which I imagine is what every actor wants to hear, or anyone in movies wants to hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Great stills.
Well, no, that's a goal, right? For a lot of
Is
filmmakers.
it? Oh, I was joking.
You want
There
every
you go.
frame to be really
Art.
well composed, and no, but it does for sure. It's a lot. It's a lot, this movie, I guess. Couch made of a bathtub.
Unfortunately, I think the comedy was like a lot of the
Yeah.
or things that we view as like, ooh, yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely Mickey Rooney's supposed to be like a funny character.
That, but then also like I think the men talking about her, that's probably supposed to be funny.
Oh, sure.
And like how they're drunk and banging on her door, like maybe that was supposed to be a riot.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be funny that they got like left out in the cold,
Exactly.
that they got scammed. or
Scammed.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny that it's not funny at all.
Yes, I agree. Funny that it's not funny at all.
There aren't it's not a movie with jokes, if that makes sense.
No. No.
I think that's more or less it.
Thanks so much for having me.
My gosh, well, yeah, thank you for joining us. And where can folks check out your podcast?
Anywhere podcasts are streamed.
Sure. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
It's called Girls Interrupted.
Yes, girls.
And you talk about all kinds of stuff. You talk about a bunch of movies, right?
Yeah, I like movies. I guess.
Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we're going to do a bunch more movies. And that's all for now. Hi there, everybody. Thanks for checking this video out. We're looking to try to do more of these on the channel, and in particular, if you have any suggestions for classic movies that you would like us to talk about, feel free to let us know on the comments here in the video, or you can check out our website and talk to us there. And that's about it for now. Take care.